Good evening, Houdat Nation, and a happy Wednesday on a Tuesday to our Bayou Blitz family. Yeah, that's right. We like you guys so much that we decided to give you an earlier edition to our weekly Bayou Blitz podcast. If that is inconvenient to anyone, blame the co host sitting to the other side of the screen, Mr. Brendan Boylan, because Brendan, this is his last show, last Bayou Blitz as a single member of society.
That is true.
I'd like to be. I'm not sure. I'm sure I'm not the first, but I'd like to be at least one of the first. Yeah, to give you a happy congratulations and send you off, with a salutation off into married life. With that, folks, I am Bob Rose. I am one of your married co-hosts to your Bayou Blitz podcast. And, again, joining me as a single member for the final Tuesday of his life, Brendan Boylan.
Wow. When you say it like that. No, I'm just kidding. Super excited. We leave tomorrow morning. So thank you guys for tuning in a little bit early to hang out with us. Bob, before we get started on, just the Saints and all of the super duper happy stuff that's going on in Saints land, I want to congratulate the world on getting to what I consider the most fun part of sports season. Like, the summer's really long. This year wasn't as long because you had the Olympics and you had a couple other things going on. But now we're hitting full stride sports mode, right? Say what you will. I cannot watch baseball during the regular season, but you give me playoff games. You give me games like yesterday where the Mets and Braves played a doubleheader and win and in type of thing. That's fun. So we've hit that part of the season. We've been in football season for a while. Preseason basketball starts this week. So the NBA is coming back. Preseason hockey's underway. Like, we're hitting that prime time part. So congrats, guys. We got here. It took a long time. It takes a long time every summer, but we're here. And I'll also throw out there, because I know I have Pels fans in here too. So I'll go ahead and throw out there. My team is not the Pels. If you guys have followed us at all, you guys know that. I'm going to go ahead and go on a bold prediction. The Charlotte Hornets will make the playoffs this year. They might be a play-in team that win the play-in tournament and get in, but a healthy LaMelo Ball is going to get them back to the playoffs for the first time in a long time.
Because of the play-in games now, aren't there 57 teams that go to the playoffs in the NBA?
It's 8 still on each,
Okay.
in each conference. So you have 10 teams, right? The bottom 7, 8, 9, 10 are your play-in tournaments, and it's a way for them to get extra national TV games and make more money. Exactly. You're exactly right. And it's a way for stadiums to get an extra home game in and be able to jack up prices. But yes, I will go out on a limb and say that. That's my early prediction for the year. But let's get to the New Orleans Saints. DJ, thanks for the congrats. Jerry asked Tuesday nights now. No, it's my fault. It's completely me. And DJ will get into your comments with some of the other stuff going on. But before we do that, guys.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt. Because of our schedule shift, Alan Ulrich of Under the Dome has been so kind to move his show, which of course I am often a guest host with him. Under the Dome will be tomorrow evening. So I have to throw that out there because I know a lot of our followers follow both shows. And follow all three of us, Brendan, myself, and Alan. So I don't know if Alan posted anything tonight, but if he hasn't, I'm here to say Under the Dome will be probably in the Bayou Blitz time slot tomorrow, since we're taking the Tuesday night slot this week.
So we're just flip-flopping.
Basically.
But, what has to be done, even though it's all Brendan's fault. But you know what is not my fault? The fact that we're in the most wonderful time of the year, because football's back, Bob, and it's here to stay until February. And because of all that, you also have millions of fans across 33 states that got in the game last year by making picks on Underdog. Bob, we kind of said this in our post-game therapy session, But now we're a little less sad and we can be happy about it. Bob and I finally hit this year, guys. So if you guys tailed our picks for this past week, you guys won on Underdog. It's a great experience. It's a super easy to navigate app. So if you guys haven't already, go ahead and tail us for this next week or this upcoming week. Obviously, because it's only Tuesday, there's not a lot of projections that are out yet. So I will tweet them and we'll retweet it on the Bayou Blitz X Twitter account. But like I said, making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com. And if you haven't yet, sign up with our promo code Bayou Blitz, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy promo code Bayou Blitz to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Free pick last week was Patrick Mahomes for higher than half a yard. Bob and I threw that into our pick'em that won, so you guys should check that out as well. Of course, you must be 18 or older or 19 or older if you're in Alabama or Nebraska, 19 or older in Colorado for some games, and 21 plus if you're in Massachusetts or Arizona. You must also be present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. If you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. If you're in Arizona, you can call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783 or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. And of course, if you're in New York, you can call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467369. If you're in New York, you're probably watching the Mets right now, who are in the playoffs. So hopefully, if you guys are Saints fans, but fans of other teams in other states and regions, I hope you're having a decent time as we hit the most fun time of the year. Bob, let's talk about sad things now. We talked about it being a happy time of year for far too long. It's only been a whopping maybe 3 minutes, but unfortunately, it's a little too long, especially with the New Orleans Saints dropping their second consecutive this week in Atlanta. They have a tall task at hand, Monday Night Football in Kansas City at Arrowhead against the Kansas City Chiefs. But before we get to that, I think some of the biggest news involves a former Chief and current member of the New Orleans Saints, Willie Gay, posting a photo on his Instagram story or just Instagram in general yesterday. It looks like Willie Gay has had some sort of procedure to his hand. Bob, what's the latest?
That's the latest, Brendan. Unfortunately, we don't have any more news than that. Dennis Allen did not make a statement about Willie Gay today. Not unusual. Everything, including the official injury report, gets pushed back a day when a team is scheduled for a Monday night contest, which the Saints, of course, are this week. So we won't have any specific injury news for possibly as long as 2 days now, if you guys are watching this on Tuesday night. But as we know, Willie Gay was one of this handful of New Orleans Saints that left the game against Atlanta during Sunday's loss. Gay was diagnosed with a hand injury, obviously did not return to the game. And then to your point, Willie posted on his Instagram, where his hand was in some sort of, I couldn't tell, it wasn't a traditional cast, but I couldn't tell whether it was a surgical cast or some sort of brace. But clearly, Willie Gay has an issue with his hand, and he is just one of several New Orleans Saints, whose statuses we are going to be watching very, very closely this week. We thought the injury report was long last week. It's it's going to look like a dollar store receipt this week.
Dollar store receipt? CVS pharmacy receipt. You guys throw some of your favorite receipts that are just long. I know there's stores in certain parts of the country that we don't have where Bob and I are at. So you guys throw your favorites in there. Yeah, and that's the case for both sides, right? Kansas City goes into Monday Night Football very banged up. The biggest question is surrounding Rashid Rice. Is it a torn ACL? That's what it's believed to be at this point. I know he was undergoing some further testing early in the week this week to either confirm and just get some second and third opinions. How unfortunate would that be for them? This guy who's really turning the corner in year 2 gets taken out by his own quarterback and out for the season. Let's talk about Kansas City because they're a team that is without Isaiah Pacheco, the team that's without Edwards-Helaire, who's still out for mental health reasons. They're on their third running back. They're down their top 2 receivers. Up until last week, Travis Kelce had not really looked like himself, and he's failed to find the end zone to this point. Mahomes is, I believe the stat was like number 1 in the NFL in interceptions over the last 2 or 3 years. For as wonderful and as fun as he is to watch, that's got to be a concern for them as well. They lost some key parts to the defense that has been a part of some of their Super Bowl runs, but somehow they're still 4-0. So what makes this Chiefs team, outside of the obvious, Patrick Mahomes, a future Hall of Famer, what makes this team so special, and what is there to worry about against Kansas City, even in a year where they're missing a lot of talent due to injury?
There's several things that make the Chiefs a continued danger, to the NFL. You highlighted just some of the talent that they either lost, in the offseason or is going to be sitting on the sidelines in street clothes. But they still have Patrick Mahomes. They still have Andy Reid, who is, for my money, the best coach in the NFL right now, and certainly a Hall of Fame, a future member of the Hall of Fame. They have Steve Spagnuolo, who, his short 1-year tenure as defensive coordinator in New Orleans, was highly infuriating. I was going to say forgettable, but it's not forgettable because you remember how bad it was. But Spags, since landed on his feet in Kansas City with Andy Reid, he's pretty widely recognized as one of the top defensive minds in the league. And the Chiefs still have a lot of talent up front on that defense. It's thinner. It's a thinner front if they get banged up there, but they have talent to alter the outcome of a game. And of course, especially when you play in Arrowhead, you have to deal with Goodell's goons, the black and white striped uniformed members of the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not saying all of Kansas City's victories are by result of questionable means, but certainly, several outcomes can be openly questioned, blatantly questioned at that. Even that. Usually I like to make tongue-in-cheek remarks. I don't think that was very tongue-in-cheek. I'm pretty sure I left that one wide out there. But even outside of that, the Chiefs are a talented team. Even aside from Mahomes, just the fact that they can dust off Kareem Hunt sitting in the back of the closet, inactive for about 1.5 years, and he comes out on Sunday and has a productive day. Kelsey's still a dangerous weapon, and it doesn't seem to matter who Patrick Mahomes is throwing to. Between his skills and the offensive designs and play calling of Andy Reid, someone is always going to make a play for the Chiefs. So there are plenty of reasons why this Chiefs team is still very, very dangerous for a championship this year.
I think it's interesting, like Kareem Hunt. Remember, he came into New Orleans, what was it, last year for a workout, and there was some serious talk and speculation whether he was going to be in New Orleans. Running backs, it's a weird position as of late because I feel like there's a lot of talented guys that are just not getting contracts, or sitting for a long time and waiting to get a contract. And Kareem Hunt goes back to, a place that he's familiar and gets the job done. The Saints have a lot on their plate this week when it comes to the defensive side. We already mentioned Willie Gay. Not sure what his status is going to be. We've seen linebackers go out there with soft casts on hands and make it happen. Demario Davis, not sure what his status is going to be. Like at this point in the week, it is a lot of Bob and I could probably write up the injury report and get pretty close because nobody really knows. It's all just speculation at this point. But we talked about, or you just talked about, the Kansas City Chiefs, how talented they are despite some of the injuries and despite some of the adversity, and how they have one of the best offensive minds maybe in NFL history with Andy Reid as the head coach. But if there has been a bright spot even through the last 2 games for New Orleans, it's that the defense appears to be, on paper, we got it in early this week, on paper, that this defense is like a top 5 defense in football in terms of points allowed. Like they bend, they don't break. But this is a different animal, right? Like Kansas City is a different animal than anybody that the Saints have seen, and probably anybody that the Saints will see, right? You can throw Philly up there as a team that has a dangerous offense when fully healthy, and the Saints did a good job containing them. Obviously, last week didn't give up an offensive touchdown against Atlanta. Really dominated Dallas, and we don't have to get into Carolina week 1 because that's a completely different Carolina team than they have now. Who would have thought? Andy Dalton. Anybody have that on their bingo card for 2024? But this is a completely different animal, and the Saints could very well be without their top 2 linebackers. They're still waiting to get a little bit more out of edge rushers not named Carl Granderson. And last week was another week. I feel like I said this a week ago when it came to Chase Young. Like Chase is getting close. He got close again last week. Shoot, we even saw Peyton Turner have a moment against the Falcons. They're getting close and closer, but this is close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, Bob. And that's kind of where we're at with the New Orleans Saints. And Mahomes can make even the best defensive backs in football look silly. And Paulson and Debo looked good at times against Atlanta, but also looked very, very silly at times against Atlanta. So with some of those questions concerning your defense, how do you attack a Patrick Mahomes-led offense? Because historically, the Saints haven't played awful against Patrick Mahomes. But this is a very different version of Patrick Mahomes in the Chiefs offense.
Yeah, it is. And it's a more balanced attack, and it has to be because you don't have Rashee Rice, you don't have you don't have Hollywood Brown, and you've been without Tyreek Hill for a couple years now. So you can't drop back to pass and expect to be successful throwing the ball 45, 50 times a game like earlier in Mahomes' career. So they have to run the ball. At least a little bit to establish a tiny bit of balance to keep that pass rush off balance. Because even aside from the injury problems, Kansas City has a huge gaping hole at left tackle. Their number 2 draft choice this year, second round draft choice. He's been benched to cut Kingsley. He's been benched a couple of times to be replaced by Wanya Morris, last year's 3rd round pick. And he's been no better. So that's a big problem. And a lot of teams, the Cincinnati game this year, which Kansas City ultimately pulled out a win, but Mahomes was battered all day long. In fact, I don't remember ever seeing Patrick Mahomes hit as often as he was in that Cincinnati game. Maybe the closest was the Super Bowl loss to Tampa Bay, a few years back. So that's the way you attack them. You attack the Chiefs' backfield. You know that you're going to leave yourself a little bit vulnerable on the back end when you do that. So you're taking a gamble that, when the Chiefs run the ball, that you're going to be able to get that runner on the ground, either behind the line or at least after a minimal gain. Because if you don't, there's a lot of open field to be had. That if you attack the Kansas City backfield, that if Mahomes escapes pressure, he's either going to make a big play with his legs or hit a play downfield to Kelsey, or one of those mediocre wide receivers left standing. So you do take an awful risk against such a good quarterback when you do that. But the way I see it, you have no choice. You can't sit back there and let Mahomes pick you apart and let Kansas City run for 4 and 5 yards a pop, hoping you'll get them in a 3rd and short and make a big stop. Because consistently, the Chiefs have shown that strategy is not going to work either. So you come off the bus attacking and you keep attacking. And you said that the Saints have gotten real close, to Jalen Hurts, 2 weeks ago, and then to Kirk Cousins. Well, I mean, real close ain't cutting it. You're going to have to get home, or alter throws, so that way your secondary can make plays on it. Because I mean, if you ask me, and it's not just Paulson and Debo, the New Orleans secondary is in a little bit of a slump right now. Anyway, I'm not going to come out and say that they're playing poorly just yet. Because I mean, they did shut out Drake London. They did all but basically shut down CD Lamb, other than one broken play. So they're still playing well in stretches. But this defense in general has had breakdowns in crucial moments over the last 2 weeks. And you called them a bend but don't break defense. The Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope only worked for Ali for a couple of fights, and it's not going to work for every fighter in the world or every fight in the world. Why? Because eventually you're going to get hit. If you play a bend but don't break defense, eventually you're going to break. And that's what we've seen out of the Saints the last 2 weeks. And you can't play that way against Kansas City. You're going to have to create a couple of turnovers, or get a couple of three and out stops in a row where your offense then takes advantage.
You also have to remember, going to Arrowhead is not easy either. Playing on the road in that stadium, a team that's looking to go 5-0, that's going to be a challenge in itself. So with that, let's flip to the offense, who's going to feel the effects of the Arrowhead crowd more so than the Saints defense. I think the interesting thing with the Saints, and given the numbers are skewed because they dropped 40 bombs the first 2 weeks of the season, like they're still number 1 in the league in scoring.
Mm-hmm.
And say what you will about, week 3, that was a bad week. But last week, they still put up 24 points. It wasn't the prettiest thing. There were definitely things that could be cleaned up. But they still put up 24 points. And I remember specifically doing pregame shows, whether it would be with you over the last few years, whether it be the year or two I did it with John Hendricks. And one thing that we talked about a lot, and that I've talked about a lot, with how good the Saints defense has been over the last few years, I said, if you score 20 points, you're going to have a shot, because this defense, on average, is holding teams to somewhere around 20 points.
Mm-hmm.
And so all you could ask for was that. And the last 3 years have been extremely frustrating, because sometimes you get an offense that was coherent and could actually move the football and put points on the board. And then there'd be games where it's like, oh, right, like we don't know how to throw a pass. We can't catch a ball. We don't know any play outside of halfback dive on Madden, right? Well, now you have an offense that moves the ball, has some big play moments. You're seeing Alvin Kamara, who leads the league in scrimmage yards and is tied for the league lead in touchdowns, kind of find his own again.
Mm-hmm.
And though Derek Carr's numbers haven't been eye-catching, you're seeing a Derek Carr who's playing with a little bit more confidence than he was early in the year last year. With all that, I still feel like they are under more scrutiny than a defense that I would say lost you the last 2 games because they broke at the wrong time, right? The big play finally happened. Bob, why do you think the offense is still under so much scrutiny, especially over the last 2 weeks, and facing a Chiefs defense that is it weird to say underrated as a team that just won a Super Bowl? But they are they are very underrated defense. And I think a lot of that is just because Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, like they get all the attention. But this is a really, really good group that's coached well. I wish the Spagnuolo coaching well also happened in New Orleans, but it didn't. We're not salty over here at all, but they're well coached. They have some tremendous playmakers, and they have one of the best defensive linemen in the league, in Chris Jones. So, how do the Saints get back to how they were the first 2 weeks, and why do you think they're under so much scrutiny? And how much of that is just because Derek Carr is not liked?
A lot of it is because Derek Carr is not liked. The offense has been under more scrutiny than the defense the last 2 weeks, generally speaking, because people were waiting to scrutinize the offense. People were waiting to scrutinize Derek Carr. I'm like you. The offense has not been great the last 2 weeks. But especially last week against Atlanta, they played well enough to win. They had 365, 370 total yards. They moved the ball well enough, and they put up 24 points, which, when you're talking about how good the Saints defense should be, scoring 24 points will win you most games. Just didn't last week. Wasn't the offense's fault. Carr, we said this on the post-game show. We both agreed on the post-game show that, Carr did a nice job against the Falcons of taking what the defense was giving him. He wasn't trying to take unnecessary shots down the field. And as a result, Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave combined for 16 catches, and about 180 yards, if I'm not mistaken. So those are pretty solid numbers. Kamara had a nice game against Atlanta. Once again, over 100 yards, of total offense. On 26 touches, he reached the end zone. I think fans also got spoiled. It's difficult to say that you can get spoiled in only 2 weeks' time, but I think that's what happened, because people are all. I can't tell you how many comments or responses that I've read. The honeymoon period is over for Clint Kubiak. Why? The entire team had a bad day against Philadelphia. Certainly, some of Kubiak's play calling can be questioned, against Atlanta. I still, for the life of me, don't know how you come into a game saying, okay, we've been successful running the ball to the left all year long. The half of our offensive line that remains healthy is on the left side. Let's run the ball to the right. I don't get that. I really don't. But I thought Kubiak called a nice game with the passing plays. Again, they worked the Falcons from sideline to sideline, and when you're playing a 2-deep defense like Raheem Morris likes to play, you take deep shots at your own risk. You do so at the risk of either your quarterback hitting the ground because he has to hold on to the ball too long, or your quarterback throwing interceptions because he has to throw the ball into coverage. They didn't do that for the most part. They did what you're supposed to do against that defense. You worked them sideline to sideline. You got the ball to your best players, Kamara, Olave, Shaheed, and hope that they did something with it after the catch. So I thought that aspect of it was smart. I don't get the rushing game plan. And I think losing Taysom Hill, not even midway through the game, I think hurt as well. But I still think that this is a much improved offense than the product that we've seen over the last 2 years. But you're going up against the Kansas City defense, which I'm with you. It's hard. It's hard to call any aspect of the Chiefs underrated with a straight face, but I think we can call the defense underrated. They have an outstanding linebacker in Nick Bolton. Not enough people know about him. One of, if not the best interior defensive linemen in Chris Jones. And a couple of up and coming edge rushers and George Karlaftis, and Felix Uzama. They're going to be a real test for for Penning and Fuaga on the outside, because that beat up Saints interior is going to have their hands full with not only Chris Jones but Mike Pennell as well.
Do you have any faith that Cesar Ruiz could play on Monday night? And if so, do you think that makes a difference in how this game is played and or called?
I do think that there's a decent possibility that Ruiz plays on Monday night. Because remember, I mean, after he went down with that knee injury against Philadelphia, he did come back into the game. And we didn't know that Ruiz was not going to be active for this past Sunday's game until late in the week. So that gives you a glimmer of hope that Cesar is going to be able to play. If he does, I do think that should give Clint Kubiak a little bit more confidence, in his play calling. But again, even with a replacement center and really a third or fourth string center, and Shane Lemieux, and a second string right guard, that was a converted tackle in Landon Young, Kubiak still ran a lot to the right hand, right hand side. So I don't know how much that changes the play calling. Other than maybe, hopefully, Kubiak looked at the film and said, you know what, we are having more success running to the left. I think we're going to go in with a more left-handed game plan, this Monday against the Chiefs. As far as Ruiz being able to play, how much does that go? How much additional confidence does that give me for the pass protection? None. Because Ruiz can't protect the passer worth hell. And you know what? And I think you said it on our post-game show. The Saints offensive line, considering they did have two backups, they played pretty well against Atlanta. Carr only went down with a sack once and was only hit an additional 2 times. He oftentimes had plenty of time to pass the ball. The Saints did run for, what was it? A little over 4 yards a carry. So they were getting enough push at the line of scrimmage. Whether that's sustainable against a Chiefs defensive front seven that's far better than the Atlanta Falcons, that's what makes me nervous.
I think that's fair. What you said about running to the right, like a lot, I understand having to switch it up. Like, you can't run the ball to the left every single time. But it got to a point where it was like, all right, guys, I think there was only one play to the right that had more than like a 5-yard gain, and it was one of the Taysom Hill touchdowns. Mm-hmm. And other than that, you were getting minimum yards, 1, 2, negative yardage, or whatever it may have been. I think that this question was going to come up. Hopefully I'm not throwing you too far off your game, because speculation's fun. And we were just talking about the running game. Kendre Miller is about to be activated for his 3-week period, right? Coming off of IR. I think it would be a stretch for him to play Monday night. But let's say he does. Let's say he's at least active for the game. How many touches do you see, whether it be Monday, whether it be the week following? How many touches do you see for Kendre Miller? And what kind of difference could Kendre make for this team that right now doesn't really have a second option at running back?
No, they don't. And I know you're a fan of Jamal Williams. But
he's an energy guy. I like energy guys.
Yeah.
They don't need a ton of touches. Just give them a couple to bring some energy. And I've been disappointed that hasn't been given. I think he had 1 or 2 carries last week.
Yeah, he did. Kendre Miller is a different kind of animal than Jamal Williams. Kendre Miller is a different kind of animal than Jamal Williams. He's more of a traditional fit for the Kubiak scheme. So I do think that Kendre can bring a lot of juice to this offense if he comes in healthy and, more importantly, stays healthy. But I wouldn't expect it right away. you would expect a guy like Kendra coming off of his ankle injury to be on some kind of pitch count, limited situational snaps, unless Alvin Kamara's rib injury worsens. If Alvin continues to take the punishment that he took Sunday night, with those rib injuries, he's not going to remain upright for a whole lot longer. So, I mean, you have to find a way to lessen his workload. Kendra Miller and a healthy Taysom Hill are perfect ways to do that. But I don't think Clint Kubiak is going to take a freshly off injured reserve Kendra Miller and throw him into the mix for 15 or 20 touches. I would be surprised if that's the plan. And I agree with you. I would be surprised if Kendra gets a helmet for Monday night at all. Yet it almost sounds silly to say it like that, like, oh, you have to take it easy with Kendra Miller coming back. You have to take it slow with him. Yeah, Brendan, he injured, and I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. Kendra injured his ankle, on the first day of training camp. He didn't practice again, hasn't practiced yet, and the first day of training camp was what, July 25th?
Something like that.
That's 5. That is 9 weeks. We're going into the 10th week off of that ankle injury. How serious was this thing where you need 10 weeks off of an ankle injury and still need a light workload when you come back?
Yeah. I mean, even if it is the most severe high ankle sprain, you're looking at 2.5 months off. You would, at some point, around 2.5 to 3 months, you would imagine you are revamping, or something. And we really haven't seen it. So that's going to be something as well. I know his practice window starts. I'm going to be curious when he's activated.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to tell you a lot. DJ says Jamal Williams needs to go. He's just eating up the money. I think the interesting thing with Jamal, as much as I like him, and I actually have a jersey right here of Jamal's, but I think the interesting thing, and it's not just guys like Jamal, it happens everywhere. He was signed under a different regime and signed under a completely different offensive philosophy. And now he doesn't fit the offensive philosophies. Do I still think he should get some goal line touches? Yes. Do I still think he should get some touches, or at least more than 2 touches a game? Absolutely, I do. And that's for anybody, like any team. No teams now. This is not the 80s. This is not the 90s where you can give a guy the ball 30 times a game. Like, just a change of pace. And I know the Saints were doing that with Taysom more, and that's fine. If that's what you want to do with Taysom. I love Taysom Hill. But when Taysom goes down in late in the second quarter and misses the rest of the game, how does Jamal not get the change-up type of touches? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. And Alvin's on a broken rib. Why isn't, even if Jamal has to fall forward for a yard or two, like, I don't get it. That was my biggest gripe. I get it, and I'm willing to admit that he does not fit the system. Now, he fit the Carmichael system a little bit, being that Mark Ingram, Latavius Murray change of pace guy. He doesn't really fit the Kubiak scheme, but when guys go down, it's like next man up, and I didn't feel like he got the opportunity to be the next man up. That was my gripe on that. I think Kendra is interesting, and I think the other thing that people forget, I think a lot of people think of Kendra being more of like a scat back, but he's like 220 pounds.
Yeah.
He's a big dude that has the ability to catch the football. And he didn't do a lot of that at TCU, and Bob and I talked about that throughout the draft process and after the Saints selected him, is that we felt like he was a capable pass catcher that didn't really get to showcase it at TCU because of the type of offense that they had and how he was the workhorse of that team that eventually got to the national championship game. Just to talk more about his injury history, just so you guys, can hate us a little bit more for talking about it. Remember, he missed the national championship game because of injury. But he was the workhorse of that team. He didn't have to go catch passes. And Max Dugan was a quarterback that didn't really need to check it down a whole lot. And that's why that team ended up making the run that they did and then got absolutely demolished by Georgia in the national championship game. But I think he brings something a little different. I think what Bob said is extremely accurate, is he fits that Kubiak type of system very well. And if you want a prime example, I hate that I'm doing this, but here I go. Go look at San Francisco right now without Christian McCaffrey and look at the back that Jordan Mason is and what he's able to do. It's not the same as Christian McCaffrey by any means. And there's not a lot of backs in NFL history that are like Christian McCaffrey in the versatility that he brings. But Mason fits what they want to do. I see Kendre fitting more of that than anything, and Kamara fitting more of that, Christian McCaffrey type of role. Those guys are going to be talked about and linked together forever. I know it was the same draft class. They were both in the NFC South for a long time, but just to praise the Saints for a moment, because we've talked poorly about this team a lot so far. Just to go back to the 17 draft, if you guys don't remember, there was talk about the Saints looking to potentially trade up for Christian McCaffrey. Yep. Talk about value in round 3 to get Alvin Kamara, a guy who has put up very similar numbers to Christian McCaffrey in his NFL career. But I think Miller could really change some dynamics of all that. I think it would be good for Alvin as well, because it would lessen the load week in and week out. Let's talk about receivers, Bob, before we close out the show. You know where I'm going with this too. Yeah. Unfortunately, you and I sat down and did this like not even 48 hours ago, right? Not a lot of new things have happened. We can preview a little bit. We can talk about some things. If you guys join us week in and week out, we don't touch on rumors a whole lot, but here we go. It's a special edition because it's a different day of the week, which means we're gonna do some different things. Bob, you know the rumors as well as I do, and they've progressively gotten worse, at least for the Raiders. And that is the belief that Davante Adams has played his last down as a Raider. So much so that there was an Instagram post regarding that was liked by head coach Antonio Pierce of the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that tells you all you need to know about the relationship between Adams and Vegas right now. Mm-hmm. For those of you who don't know and are thinking, well, how does this affect the New Orleans Saints? Well, Davante Adams has a very good relationship with Derek Carr. He was very vocal about when Derek Carr was benched and then eventually let go by the Raiders and how unhappy he was because he picked the Raiders to play with Derek Carr. Well, the Saints need a third receiver. And I know you guys are thinking, well, Adams isn't a receiver 3. That's not what I'm saying. They need another pass-catching target and a guy who's a little bit bigger in frame. And I brought up Michael Thomas last week. And Adams may not be the same physical specimen of Michael Thomas, but in terms of being an excellent route runner, great hands, more veteran leadership, he checks all the boxes.
Yep.
Bob, if you're the New Orleans Saints right now, are you entertaining the idea of at least picking up the phone and going, hey, Vegas, I hear that you have a problem with your star wide receiver?
Been there, done that.
Yeah. Ironically, we went through a very similar thing. We ended up just not re-signing him. You guys may be forced to trade him. What's it going to take to get Davante Adams? Are you at least picking up the phone and having that conversation?
I think so. And I say it
wait. I think so. No, Bob, this is your decision. That's a cop-out answer. Like, it's your choice. What are we doing?
Well, and I do have an answer, but it's contingent on one factor. I don't know what Davante Adams' contract is. If he's in a contract year, then no, I don't entertain the offer at all. If he's under contract and I can bring him in knowing that he's under contract for at least a couple of years, where I can play, Loomis ball, and start my restructuring process now, Yeah, then yes, I do make that call. Also contingent upon, and this has to be an honest conversation within the walls of the organization. Hey, guys, Dennis Allen, Clint Kubiak, Joe Woods, do we really think that we have the team to make a playoff run if we trade for a guy like Devontae Adams? If that on, and of course they're not going to come out publicly and say, no, we don't think we have the team. But that's why I said it has to be an honest conversation within behind closed doors. If that answer is yes, if we go out and get Adams, I think I can make a run for a championship. Then of course I make that call. Because rumor has it that the Raiders are looking for a second round pick, second round pick plus probably an additional draft choice contingent upon performance or playing time. So we'll call it a second round pick and an early day 3 pick. I think you make that call. Yeah, well, yeah, but I think I make that call then because again, like you pointed out, he has a good relationship with Derek Carr, dating all the way back to their collegiate days. So it gives Carr, another comfortable target to throw to, and that's something that you and I highlighted, particularly, several times last year, but especially most recently after the Atlanta loss. That there were those just times where a Juwan Johnson looked open, at least initially. A Foster Moreau might have looked open in past weeks. Carr doesn't feel comfortable with them. Mason Tipton, Cedric Wilson, on the few times they get separation, Carr doesn't feel comfortable with them. Eventually he's going to force the ball to Olave or Shaheed, in a big situation because he doesn't feel comfortable with an open target, and that ball is going to be intercepted. And then the ABC people, anybody but Carr people, are going to come driving out of the woodwork like a dam just broke. If you have Devontae Adams, defenses are going to have to prepare for him like he's the number one receiver. That gives additional one-on-one opportunities for Shaheed. That gives some additional opportunities one-on-one for Olave, who you and I both agree is quickly blossoming into a potentially top-tier number one receiver before our very eyes. Bringing in an Adams takes some targets away from Olave, but in the long run could make Chris a more effective receiver. So, if I could pull off that trade, I make it.
This may be an unpopular opinion. I shared it over the summer, so I'll share it again. And it's nothing against Rashid Shaheed because he's had a stellar start to the year. I think Shaheed is better suited to be a third receiver than he is a number 2 receiver. And I say that because of his speed and the different matchups that you would get with him being more of a slot guy. So I think a trade like that would work. Contract details, because you asked, and sometimes I deliver. Today is one of the rare occasions in which I do. This year, Adams is 32 years old. He has a cap hit of $25 million. There is a way to get out of his contract at the end of this year. If you do not, his contract in 25 and 26 include a cap hit of $44 million.
Well, but that's when you play. That's when you play Loomis ball, though.
Exactly. He would be unrestricted in 2027. So I think it's a call the Saints should make. I saw someone in here. Let me scroll back. Let's see who asked the question. 504 Company asked, is a second and a Debo too much to give up for Adams? I think so.
Yes.
I think a second and a day 3 pick wouldn't. I wouldn't be mad. And again, this goes back to what Bob said. You have to have honest conversation behind closed doors. If you think you're close, I wouldn't even be mad of giving up like a second this year and a third next year. If you truly think that it's going to put you over the top or put you in a position where you could make a deep playoff run, I wouldn't be mad at that at all. I realistically think you're going to have to trade somebody to make money work. I don't know how some of those, I'm not going to act like I understand how some of that stuff works because there are loopholes to everything when it comes to things like that. You don't see a lot of 3-team trades in the NFL, but I mean, shoot, I wouldn't be surprised if the Saints were one of those teams that called somebody and like, hey, you want to help facilitate this, and we'll send you a 5th-round pick for free, essentially, or what have you. There's ways to get around it, but realistically, I think it's going to be a second and like I don't want to say a fringe starter, not like a superstar starter, not a star starter, but like a guy who you might miss a little bit.
Well,
Bob has a name.
We just got done talking about him. Jamal Williams. If you feel confident that Kendra Miller, and this is a gamble, if you feel semi-confident that Kendra Miller is going to come in and stay healthy, I don't think there's any doubt that he's going to be the number 2 back because of what we just got done talking about, and Jamal Williams does not fit that system. And they don't trust Jamal Williams. That's why he's only getting 1 or 2 touches a game. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about a fringe starter, and a guy who can be a capable starter in this league, because I agree with you, but I like Jamal Williams generally, as a running back. That just does trim some cap. You can make a move with, if you bring in a Devontae Adams, you can make a move and cut a Cedric Wilson. None of his contract is guaranteed, and he's signed to a 2-year deal. Cedric Wilson does not have a catch in 4 games. Bye-bye. So yeah, I mean, and there's different guys on your roster. Carl Granderson, he can be restructured. He just signed a deal. Cesar Ruiz, Eric McCoy, their new contracts are freshly signed. You push back some of their money. So yeah, I mean, you can't, that's why I call it Loomis ball. But a guy like Devontae Adams, if you trade for him, he has to have at least a couple years left on his deal. According to you, he does. So you add a couple voidable years onto that deal where you're paying him dead cap money through like the 28th season. But I'm not worried about the finances. But if you have to trim a player right away, Jamal Williams, Cedric Wilson are guys that would come first to mind. Jamal Williams in a trade, Cedric Wilson in a cut.
We will definitely be watching to see ultimately what happens. I don't know, Bob, you may have different feelings. And I don't mean this as my weekly age insult, but because we come from completely different generations of mindset of athletes.
I'm going to pretend you just called me a generational talent. That's the way I'm going to go with that.
You're a generational talent. You're damn right. Generational talent, Hall of Famer Bob Rose over there. We live in a world now where guys can demand a trade and then facilitate where they want to get traded.
Yeah.
To where 20, 30 years ago, it was if you demand a trade, you're getting shipped wherever we want to send your ass.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the worst team in the league. We don't care. If you don't want to play here, we're going to ship you wherever we can find someone who wants you. And a lot of times if it ended badly, it was let's find the worst place to send you.
Yeah.
That's not the way it works anymore. I'm an old soul, and I hate that. Like, if you sign a contract and you sign an agreement, my papa used to say, the only thing a man has is his word. And if your word is to sign a contract and commit to a team for however many years, no matter how bad it goes, you're under contract. So if you say, I want to break this contract, I don't feel like you should have the ability to be like, I want to go here, make it happen. But we don't live in that world anymore. Do you think Adams has a short list? And if so, do you think New Orleans is on the short list? DJ says Eli Manning changed that. No, I will take it a step further. John Elway changed that.
Yeah.
John Elway changed that entirely.
Yeah, John Elway, Eric Dickerson, who ultimately was in the 83 draft as well, literally held out every 2 years of his career. He'd sign he'd hold out, he'd sign a multi-million-dollar contract. Then 2 years later, he'd hold out again. John Elway, Eric Dickerson, it changed that. And I love Elway. I freely and openly admit that he is one of my really the sports idol in my career. But yeah, he changed that. Eli Manning wouldn't have done what he did if John Elway hadn't done it 20 years before.
Can I blame Eli Manning though?
No.
Like I can't. I really can't. So yeah. But back to the question, do you think Adams has a short list? Do you think New Orleans would be on that short list?
I'd be willing to wager, a big old underdog bet that Davante Adams has a short list. Kansas City probably comes to mind, Super Bowl contender. But you better believe
missing their top 2 receivers,
right? But you better believe
they won't trade them in division.
And that's what I was just going to say. All of a sudden, that asking price goes up, way, way up for Vegas. Because I don't see that happening. But you look at other contenders: Buffalo, Dallas, Philadelphia. AJ Brown has reportedly been unhappy with his contract, and he's currently hurt. You think of other contenders. I would think contenders, would be on the list. Maybe Davante wants to be reunited with Aaron Rodgers in New York. Would the Saints be on that list? It depends how close. We think his relationship with Derek Carr is close. If that is true, then I would certainly believe that the Big Easy would be on Davante Adams's list.
I think it's really easy to go and say, like, okay, they were college teammates. They played in the pros. Adams was unhappy about Carr it's not shipped out because it's not like they traded him, but, not bringing him back and then benching him and then not bringing him back. I think it's easy to point that way. I think it's easy for anybody who has worked with people and had good relationships in any profession to go, I would enjoy going back to work with such and such. But I'm glad you brought up contenders, because another thing that was not a thing 20 and 30 years ago was a thing called ring chasing. Yeah. That is definitely a last 10, 15-year thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Adams being 32, was Adams on the Green Bay team that won the Super Bowl? No. Okay. There you go. I had to think about that for a second. It's close though, right? Like
I think he came maybe a couple years after. No, it had to be because Derek Carr came in 2014. Was his rookie year. If he and Davante played together in college, then you would think Davante came in and no earlier than 13. I know the
years removed.
Yeah. So I know the starting 2 wide receivers on Green Bay's roster when they beat the Steelers in the Super Bowl was Jordy Nelson and Greg Jennings. So
there you have it. Okay. So he's definitely looking for a ring at this point. And contenders are going to be number 1. AFC West division rivals, like that probably looks really good on paper to go to Kansas City. Probably not likely. The one team you didn't name that I'd throw out there, but it's not a receiver happy place to go, is Baltimore.
That's why I didn't throw it out there.
Like, I think Baltimore is naturally a spot where you're like, well, dang, if they gave Lamar like a really good receiver to go with him and Derrick Henry, like that would make sense if you're willing to take less catches. But based off what I've seen from Davante Adams, that's not going to happen. He wants his.
He wants the ring. He wants a ring, but he wants the ball while getting the ring.
Right. Which, what's the old saying? Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. But anyway,
right.
So I would be willing to bet New Orleans is on a short list. I don't know where they rank on that short list.
Yeah,
but I would definitely be willing to bet that New Orleans is there. Does New Orleans have enough ammunition, if you will, to get there? I don't know.
Well, I mean, as of right now, they have all of their a draft pick, at least one draft pick in every round next year. So if Vegas is indeed asking for a second rounder, New Orleans has that. Now the question is, you also have to ask yourself, okay, guys, I know it's only week 5 of this NFL season, but if we were going into the off season tomorrow, what are our major needs? And what should we really look for to address in the draft? offensive line, probably again. Safety, undoubtedly. You and I were crying about this all last off season. Safety, maybe linebacker, maybe defensive end, probably defensive end, definitely defensive end if you can't re-sign Chase Young, and wide receiver. Well, if you can get an established wide receiver for a second round pick, again, why wouldn't you pull that trigger?
Age.
Sure.
You could say age. And I don't know how much the Saints care about these things, right? Age. You just went through a bad divorce with a diva wideout. And you would be acquiring a guy who is labeled as a diva wideout.
Well,
so like that how much does that play as well? I don't know.
You know what? As we're talking, this just occurred to me too. Chris Olave is in his third year, right?
Correct.
This offseason, you have to make the decision on whether to pick up the fifth-year rookie option on Olave's contract.
Which they will.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's a no-brainer. Either that or you re-sign him. So one or the other. In other words, within a year or two, you're looking at having to either pay Chris Olave big money or let him walk out the door. Well, if you acquire Davante Adams, it's not going to be for a one-year rental. That's not the way New Orleans does business. So, if you acquire a guy like Davante Adams, you got to be willing to pay a guy like Davante Adams. If you do that, then you're essentially saying, Chris Olave, we love you, but we're probably not going to re-sign you when your contract comes up. So there's that too.
Well, I mean, that's a good point. There are worlds where you can find the happy medium with two receivers. But if you want the most recent example in New Orleans, it's crazy to say most recent example was like 10 years ago. Not quite 10 years ago, right? Close. We're getting there. But it's Brandon Cooks and Michael Thomas.
Yeah, but even then, Brendan, both of them were on rookie contracts. So that's something, right? That's a big consideration there.
It's a big difference too, because they both had to get paid. Mm-hmm. And like I said, Davante's under contract for another 2 years. So if you acquire him and you restructure, there's still a world where you can have him and re-sign Chris Olave. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of buts and ifs and this and that. That's the fun thing about talking about rumors.
Sure.
But I'm gonna throw what Calvin threw up here. So Calvin, sorry, it took a little bit to get to your comment, but it's true. And it would be my concern is, and this goes back to Bob's posed question of, do you think getting a guy like Adams would put you over the top? Calvin said the answer is, in all caps, no, without a legitimate offensive line. And to that, I tip my hat to you, because right now with the injuries, they don't look like they could be contenders. Now, if McCoy comes back healthy and the Saints are competitive, that's a different story, because those first 2 weeks of that offensive line were better than anything we could have imagined. But I hear you, and I understand your concerns there. So, Bob, last thing, we're playing GM Bob today, if you guys haven't noticed. So this is the final thing for GM Bob, and we're going to get going because I still have to pack, and I have a 10-hour drive tomorrow. But GM Bob, if I am the Vegas GM, I almost said Oakland. I do it every time. Also, I know it's been years, but also just sidebar for all these people, because you guys know I like my sidebars. Sidebar, I really feel bad for Oakland fans for losing the Dubs, losing the Raiders, and now losing the Athletics. And if you want a prime example, like prime pop culture example of what just happened, Ted Lasso episode 3 or season 3, episode 10. Go watch that. That is, Bob's trying to think, like, what episode is that? That's the Super League episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And Rebecca goes on this big rant about how much more money do you guys need? Just Google it if you guys have never seen it. You don't even need the context of the show. but that's what happened to Oakland sports, and it's really disappointing. So back to what I was talking about. If I'm the Vegas GM and you're Mickey Loomis, and we've just had a conversation, and yes, I'm willing to trade Devontae Adams, what is your best offer to me?
I'm gonna follow what the rumors have stated so far, and assume that you want at least a second round pick to start with. So okay, we'll start with that. The most I'd be willing to offer you for Devontae Adams, and again, this is allowing me to have a conversation with Adams and saying, hey, if we trade for you, you're going to be willing to restructure. Because if you're not, I'm not even having the conversation. So let's say you grant me permission, and I speak to him, and I get that part cleared. Obviously, after you offer you a second round pick, the most I'm going to offer you, the Las Vegas Raiders, is second round pick in 2025, Jamal Williams, and you take your choice. A 7th round pick in 2025 or a 6th round pick in 2026.
All right, so Curse of Dennis Allen just jumped into the chat. We
love Curse of Dennis Allen.
Yeah, love that on X Twitter. So I'm going to take what he just said. I'm going to counter you and see if we can make it happen. Okay, 2nd round pick, Jamal Williams, 2025 5th.
Okay,
that would do it. I
think that would do it. Because again, if I'm making, I recognize the need for draft capital, but I'm also recognizing I'm probably going to need a wide receiver. Unless A.T. Perry comes up with this magic elixir, I need another pass catcher for next year. You can usually get a quality pass catcher, tight end, or wide receiver in the 2nd or 3rd round. If I'm giving you a 2nd round pick, I'm acknowledging, okay, this is the pass catcher that I would have used my draft pick on. So yeah, I mean, I'd hate to part with a 5th round pick, but I also knew you probably weren't going to accept a 6th or a 7th. So yeah, we're both in agreement with Jamal Williams. 2nd round pick is a no-brainer.
Money even works. Like, let me see if I can make that work. So we're gonna go to NFL Trade Machine and see if that even works. Because we want to be as real as possible for you guys. So we're gonna send Devontae Adams, right? Maybe if my computer wants to work. But Bob, finish your thought. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh no, I mean, we were both in agreement going in, a 2nd round pick in Jamal Williams. I didn't think that I was going to get away with a 6th or 7th round pick, and you countering with a 5th round. I mean, that's the way trades happen, folks. A call and a couple of counter offers later. Again, for a player of the caliber of Devontae Adams, even at this stage of his career, and what he could bring to the New Orleans Saints, I think I make that deal. I agree with what Calvin said, is that you still need better performance along the offensive line. But for 3 of the 4 games, the offensive line has played well enough to win. Obviously, they did win in the first 2 weeks. They had an abysmal performance against Philadelphia, but I thought they bounced back nicely. Considering they had 2 backups, and one of those backups has no business being on an NFL team right now, I thought that offensive line played pretty well against Atlanta.
Okay, so the money works. The money does work. You could send Adams for Williams and picks. So there you have it. Let's see. Curse of Dennis Allen. It's a hard no for a 1st. I'm in agreement with that. The Saints should not offer a 1st round pick in any circumstance. And honestly, I hate to be the bearer of bad news for people who want this to happen. It's not going to happen this week.
No.
So what's going to happen this week is there's going to be a ton of teams fielding, or the Raiders are going to field a ton of calls. It might not be a ton, a handful of calls. And what's going to happen is they're going to go like this, and Bob's going to play Mickey Loomis, and they're say, "Hey, Mickey, so we just got off the phone with chewing gum. Nice, nice for the people listening. Bob's sitting there with like a mouthful of gum. It's like, all right, Mickey, look, we just got off the phone with insert team here, and they're offering this. Can you do better?" And then you're going to be able to find out very quickly, like, okay, what is the driving price?
Mhm.
Because or the market price, if you will. Because as the Raiders, you could sit there and put anything out there, but if you don't have anybody offering that, then it doesn't matter. So what happens if it is a second round pick, but nobody's offering more than a third? Well, that means the Saints can come in and be, well, we can offer you a third in this.
Mhm.
And they're going to take that and they're going to shop that offer around and be like, okay, insert team here. Can you beat this offer? And then, of course, there's going to be some of Adams going, well, I don't want to go there. So, and that's where the pressure is like, you could eat his contract at the end of the year and get out of it, but you're eating like millions and millions and millions of cap.
Yeah.
Or you could trade him and try to get something out of it. And that's why you have players who are driving the idea and the agenda of, oh, I want to go here. Because do you want to get stuck with all that dead money?
Right.
And that concludes today's lesson with Dr. Bob and PhD Brendan on NFL trade processes inside the minds of GMs. That should be our next goal. Like, right, we've had players on, we've talked to players, whether it be here on the Bayou Blitz, whether it be other places. We've talked to Hall of Famers, we've talked to Saints legends, we've talked to just greats of the game in general. I've never talked to a former GM or front office management type of person. I think that would be a really interesting conversation. And I think we need to figure that one out. So
John Butler, Randy Mueller and I were following each other for a while, but John Butler, if you're in the chat, give Randy Mueller my phone number, because Randy Mueller is one of the more interesting GMs in the NFL history anyway. But just for that fact and the fact that he was general manager period and won a fairly successful tenure with the Saints, I would love to have Randy Mueller on this show.
There you go. There you go. And if any of you guys in the chat can help us out and make it happen, slide in the DMs. Bob, with that, where can people slide into your DMs? Where can people follow your work? What was that not a nice segue, or did that catch you off guard? Or
it caught me off guard a little bit. The only thing that you left out is make sure that you go find Bob Rose on Facebook, and give him a poke. I don't even know if poking is a thing on Facebook anymore, but I know it used to be.
I think it is. I think it's somewhere stuck in like the dark interwebbing of of Facebook. But yeah, with that, Bob, where can everybody follow you and your work, especially this week, because we're not going to have a show for an extended period of time. So where can people keep up with you and keep up with the Saints while they get their little hiatus from the Bayou Blitz?
Yeah, well, Brendan is on a honeymoon. The Bayou Blitz will be on a honeymoon too. Bayou Blitz might be drinking on the beach somewhere. Brendan will be happily married. So stay tuned for us when we will give you an announcement when we will be back. It won't be, as Brendan said, won't be for pregame, postgame, for Chiefs on Monday night, and won't be next week either. I will be making appearances on Under the Dome, as I said, tomorrow night, Wednesday night, and probably next Tuesday back for the regularly scheduled programming of that. Already mentioned how you can find me on Facebook, and you can find me on X Twitter at Bobby R. 2613. I post all of my articles on there, as well as the Saints News Network or the SI.com team page.
For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. I'll be posting some pictures of the wedding and the honeymoon if you guys care. We're really excited. Like I said, we leave tomorrow morning for Disney World, where the wedding is taking place, and then we get a nice little trip to Kiowa Island for the honeymoon after the fact. Really excited. Thank you guys all for the well wishes that you guys have sent. Thank you. We will be back with what? We'll be back with the Bayou Blitz in. I can't do math. I think it's the third.
Probably my guess is 2 weeks from tomorrow.
The 13th. No, I can do a pregame show the 13th.
Okay.
So there we go. I think that'll do it. I think that'll be the next time you see us. It's for the pregame on the 13th. So that is week 6, the week 6 pregame show.
And
So
I cannot confirm or deny rumors that I will be parachuting into your wedding dressed as Daffy, dressed as Donald Duck, with a live link of the Bayou Blitz as I come down. I cannot confirm or deny that.
Okay. Well, I can confirm Mickey and Minnie will not be at the wedding because they're too damn expensive. Their fee was ridiculous. So we have the Wish version of Donald Duck parachuting in. It may or may not be Bob Rose. Spoiler alert to Katie if she's watching. With that, guys, we'll be gone for a few weeks. Thank you guys for all your continued support. Follow us both on Twitter, myself at BT Boylan, at Bobby R 2613 for Mr. Rose. You can follow the Bayou Blitz at Bayou Blitz Pod. And of course, you can subscribe and follow the podcast wherever you get your pods. Until next time, hope you guys find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. I'll see you as a married man on the other side on the 13th of October for the pregame show. Until then, who dat?